the poisonous fruit. Leslie had always felt a sense of wanderlust that not many of the children in the village could understand. While other girls her age stayed close to their homes, playing games or gossiping, Leslie felt the call of the unknown. She lived in a small, cozy house nestled at the edge of the village, tucked between the sprawling woods that bordered the distant hills. Her only companion was her grandmother, a woman of deep wisdom, who had raised her ever since she could remember. The village they called home was a peaceful one, where life moved at a slower pace, and nature thrived in its untamed beauty. People would often speak of the forest with both reverence and fear. It was said to be filled with hidden secrets, some good, some dangerous. But Leslie was never scared. To her, the forest was a grand adventure waiting to be discovered. Her grandmother often warned her about the wild creatures lurking in the woods, but Leslie was too curious to heed those warnings. She longed to explore every nook and cranny, hoping to stumble upon something magical. She had always dreamed of discovering something no one else had ever seen, something mysterious and exciting. One bright, early morning, when the sun was still climbing over the horizon, casting soft orange light over the village, Leslie felt a familiar excitement stirring in her chest. It was one of those rare days when her grandmother agreed to take her into the forest to gather herbs. Grandma had an impressive knowledge of plants, and Leslie loved accompanying her to find ingredients for her potions, teas, and remedies. "Leslie, hurry up. We need to go before the sun gets too high," her grandmother called from the front door. Her voice was warm and comforting, but Leslie could hear the urgency in her tone. With a grin, Leslie grabbed her wicker basket and dashed out the door. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of dew-covered leaves. Her grandmother, with her silver hair tucked neatly under a faded scarf, stood waiting by the edge of the woods, her walking stick firmly in hand. "Today, I need to find some elderberries and wild thyme," Grandma explained, as they set off down the familiar path. "There's a sick man in the village, and these herbs should help him recover." Leslie nodded eagerly, keeping her eyes peeled for anything that might catch her attention. The path was lined with tall trees, their trunks thick and ancient, their branches twisting toward the sky like reaching hands. The wind whispered through the leaves, filling the air with soft, rustling sounds. It was peaceful, a place where Leslie felt at home, yet also constantly aware that there was so much more to discover. They walked deeper into the forest, the sunlight filtering through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the ground. As they ventured further, the smell of pine and moss grew stronger. Leslie loved the way the forest smelled, so rich and alive. She kept close to her grandmother, who knew the forest like the back of her hand. After a while, they arrived at a small clearing, where a patch of elderberry bushes grew. Grandma knelt down to pick the ripe, dark berries, carefully placing them in her basket. Leslie, on the other hand, found herself distracted by something else, a strange gleam in the distance, just beyond a thicket of ferns. "Grandma, look," Leslie exclaimed, pointing toward the spot where the light seemed to shimmer. Her grandmother squinted at the direction Leslie was pointing, her face furrowing with curiosity. "What is it, child? Don't stray too far." But Leslie, ever the curious one, couldn't resist. She dashed toward the source of the light, her heart beating faster as she neared the strange gleam. When she reached it, she stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes widening in disbelief. In front of her stood a tree unlike any she had ever seen before. It wasn't like the ordinary oaks or pines that filled the forest. This one had a twisted, gnarled trunk that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. Its branches stretched outward, bearing fruit that glowed with an unnatural, soft blue light. The fruit was smooth, round, and a deep shade of violet, unlike any berry or apple Leslie had ever encountered. Leslie's mouth watered just at the sight of it. She had never seen anything so beautiful, so otherworldly. Without thinking, she reached out her hand, eager to pluck one of the fruits from the branch. But before she could touch it, a firm hand gripped her arm. "Leslie, stop!" Her grandmother's voice was sharp, filled with a sudden, intense fear. "Don't you dare touch that tree." Leslie turned to look at her grandmother, her face puzzled. "Why, Grandma? It looks so amazing." Her grandmother's face had gone pale, her eyes wide with concern. She quickly pulled Leslie away from the tree, her grip tightening on her arm. "That tree, It's not what it seems, she said in a low, trembling voice. What do you mean? Leslie asked, confused by her grandmother's sudden fear. Grandma looked at the tree, her face hardened with age-old wisdom. That is the tree of the cursed fruit. No one knows how it came to be, but the old stories say it was planted by an eagle, a great bird who once roamed these lands. He brought the seed from a faraway place, a place where no human had ever been. And when he planted it, it grew into that tree. Leslie stared at the tree, still fascinated, but now aware of the tension in her grandmother's voice. But why can't we touch it? It looks harmless. Her grandmother gave a bitter laugh. That's the trick. It's not harmless. The fruit is poisonous. No one has ever been able to smash the tree. Its roots are strong, deeper than anyone can imagine, and the eagle who planted it has long since disappeared. People who've tried to destroy it have vanished without a trace, as though the tree itself had swallowed them up. Leslie felt a shiver run down her spine. She had heard whispers of strange happenings in the forest, but she never imagined it could be true. She glanced nervously at the glowing fruit, a strange temptation gnawing at her. Is it dangerous to eat? Leslie asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her grandmother nodded gravely. The fruit is a trap. It lures you in with its beauty, but it hides death within. Do not be fooled by its appearance. Leslie felt a wave of unease wash over her, and without another word, her grandmother guided her quickly back toward the path. They walked in silence for a while, the weight of the encounter hanging heavy in the air. When they finally emerged from the woods and returned to their small cottage, Leslie couldn't shake the image of the tree from her mind. She sat quietly at the kitchen table, her thoughts racing. Her grandmother bustled around the stove, preparing a warm meal of vegetable stew and bread, her movements soothing and familiar. You're quiet, child, her grandmother remarked, setting a steaming bowl of stew in front of Leslie. You've seen something that has frightened you, haven't you? Leslie nodded slowly, her eyes downcast. The tree. I don't understand, Grandma. It looked so beautiful. Her grandmother's face softened. She sat down across from Leslie, taking a deep breath before speaking. I understand your curiosity, but sometimes not everything in this world is meant to be understood. Some things are beyond us, beyond what we are ready for. That tree, it is one of those things. Leslie sat in silence, her mind grappling with the mystery. Finally, she looked up at her grandmother and smiled weakly. Thank you for saving me, Grandma. Her grandmother smiled back, her eyes warm with love. It's my job, Leslie. Always remember, not everything is as it seems. There are dangers in this world, and some of them are hidden behind the most beautiful masks. Leslie nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her grandmother's protection. As the evening settled in and the fire crackled in the hearth, Leslie ate her stew, savoring each bite. The warmth of the meal and her grandmother's presence gave her comfort. She knew she was safe. When they finished their dinner, Leslie helped her grandmother clean up, and soon, they both retired to their beds. The night was calm, and the peaceful sounds of the forest outside lulled Leslie into a deep, restful sleep. That night, as she drifted off into dreams, Leslie's mind wandered back to the strange tree. The mystery of it would stay with her for a long time, but for now, in the safety of her grandmother's home, she felt at peace. And though Leslie's desire to explore would never fade, she learned an important lesson that day. Some things were better left unexplored.